Hey everyone, it's Connor here from Durham Hearing Specialists. I hope you're doing well and welcome back to a very nice case. What you can see here is an ear canal filled with slime, basically, and you can see that very dark hole right at the end. What that is a pinhole perforation of the eardrum. And the slime is just sort of desiccated wet earwax essentially. This patient has used lots of drops, which really they shouldn't have due to the perf, but it's happened, so we're going to suck it all out. But this patient can't have irrigation, like water irrigation or really any further drops unless it's been prescribed by a doctor, because there is now an entrance through to the middle ear cavity. So pinhole perfs, what are they going to do about it? Well, most eardrum perforations heal spontaneously within 6 to 10 weeks, as long as you keep it dry, it doesn't get infected, or you don't do anything silly like put your head underwater when you're going swimming and so on and so forth. The perf will close. This has not closed. The patient has had this for a while, and sometimes perfs don't close because the skin heals in such a way that the edges of the perf kind of close. So briefly, the eardrum has 3 layers. You have an outer skin layer, essentially epithelium. You have an inner kind of fibrous collagen kind of layer, and then you have on the inside a mucosa layer, which is just like skin, but it has special cells in it, like goblet cells, which produce mucus. And if you have a hole in the eardrum, sometimes what happens is that outer layer of skin and that inner layer of mucosa kind of fuses together and grows over and joins together, such that then there is no way for the perf to close properly. So when that happens, I mean, if it doesn't bother the patient, then the ENT surgeon might decide not to operate. But typically perfs can cause hearing loss. This perf is so tiny it probably isn't causing much of a loss, but it is still a problem because it leaves the patient open to infection. And also it's just a massive inconvenience, I suppose, because it means they can never put their head underwater without having an earplug in. So what can be done to close perfs surgically? Well, an ENT surgeon might decide to perform a meringoplasty. Anything with mering in the name implies relationship with the eardrum, and plasty means repair, okay? Some people call it a tympanoplasty. And if it's tympano in the name, that typically implies that the surgeon is doing something else with the middle ear, because the middle ear is the tympanic cavity or tympanum. So if it's a tympanoplasty, that would imply to me that they're perhaps fiddling around with the ossicles or having a fiddle with the stapes or something like that, or putting in a prosthesis and so on and so forth. But if it's just grafting a hole on the eardrum, that is a meringoplasty. For a pinhole perf, I mean, if they're repairing a very, very large tympanic membrane perforation, then they will typically cut round the ear canal to create a flap or tympanomeatal flap, and they'll peel up that flap and then lay some graft material underneath the perf, like cartilage or fascia, which is muscle lining, and then they'll lay the flap down again and pack it all out. But for a pinhole perf, because it's so small, they might do something called a fat plug meringoplasty. And what they do is they cut round the edge of the perf, so they're basically destroying that kind of fusion of the skin and mucosa, like I mentioned earlier. So they're destroying that. So the edges of the perf are now freshened. Okay, it's what they call freshening the edges. So they're essentially traumatizing that area, and then they will basically shove a big old wad of fat into the hole. And what happens is that gives a kind of scaffold for the skin to grow across. So whenever they use a graft material, whether it's cartilage, fascia, or fat, that material doesn't become part of the drum. Okay, it just gives a scaffold or a surface for the skin to grow across. And fat plug meringoplasty can be done in the sort of consultant's outpatient clinic. They don't necessarily need to go under general anesthesia. They'll just numb the area up. And in fact, that just very briefly, I'll segue away from that video just very briefly. I just want to clarify something that I mentioned a couple of videos ago. For some reason I was talking about local anesthesia, and I mentioned just very briefly in passing that amongst other things doctors might decide to use cocaine to numb the patient up. So just from that very brief mention, we've got lots and lots of comments through continuously. People are sort of slightly shocked and worried that doctors might use an illegal drug to numb a patient up. Just to clarify, the That is correct. It's not used that much these days, but yes, cocaine can numb you up. So anyone that snorted cocaine will probably know that. But it can numb you up. In fact, anything with cane at the end of the name will numb you up, whether it's cocaine, lidocaine, prilocaine, benzocaine, and so on and so forth. Now, in the realms of medicine, if the ENT doctor decides to, cauterize something up your nose, or, do a fat plug meringoplasty, they won't say, right, I'm going to shove some cocaine up your nose or in your ear, enjoy the trip, and I'll see you back in recovery. What they will say is, if they do decide to tell you, they'll say something like, I'm going to use Moffett's solution, or what's it called, Bonane's solution. So these are solutions that doctors can use to numb you up. So Moffett's solution, which is not used that much these days, but it is cocaine, what else do they put in it? Adrenaline and sodium bicarb. And then Bonane's solution is cocaine, menthol, and phenol, I think. So that's before. You can just about see the perf, and there we have an after shot, which things are looking not squeaky clean, but acceptably clean. So there we go. I mean, I have referred this patient to ENT for consideration that the perf will be closed, and who knows, maybe the doctor will use Bonane's solution, but probably unlikely. What they'll tend to use these days is something called EMLA cream, which you can buy over the counter actually, but it is, what is EMLA? It's prilocaine and lidocaine, or lidocaine is also called lignocaine as well, or xylocaine. So they'll kind of like paste that EMLA cream on the tympanic membrane and wait about half an hour, and then hopefully you shouldn't feel anything, and they can just cut around the edge and then shove the fat in, and happy days. Hopefully the perf will close. So there we go. There's some clarification. Doctors aren't just administering cocaine for the trip. They are actually trying to numb you up, but they are doing it in the form of Moffett's solution or Bonane's solution. So there we go. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comment section below, and I will try my very best to get back to you. And of course, I will see you guys on the next video.